G'day, George Louis here. Today's message of hope. It's dated on the 8th of April 2026. Yes, 17,000 Melbourne bins sat uncollected this week. You see, council workers in the Darebin, Hume and Marybig walked off the job. Oh yes, 24 hours that is. Rubbish piling at the curb while residents woke up on bin day to find, you got it, nothing, because the truck didn't come. Their case isn't hard to understand, I guess. I mean, real wages, that's what your income actually buys after inflation has caught up with it. It's been reportedly fallen somewhere between 7 and 12% since 2021. That's like 5 years ago. And they're asking for 10% back. The council says the state government's rate cap won't allow it. That's the rule. And so the bin sat there. Tweety tweety dum. I don't know exactly what these workers earn. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and judge whether their ask is right or wrong. One of them did say that something to I think they said something to a radio reporter this week that I thought deserved a proper moment. He said when he started 5 years ago, he could save money. Now he can't afford to live. Well, complete opposite. That's not a comfortable sentence, is it really? So I want to hold that, genuinely hold that. The grievance may be real. The system squeezing these wages may be genuinely unjust. I think there's always two sides of the story. And I always think there's still a choice in a Western society anyway. Now, both of those things can be true at the same time. I think we do people a real disservice when we only ever say one of them. I know what it feels like to be in work that isn't paying what you're worth. A lot of my colleagues say the same too. I know because I spent years there myself, not in rubbish collection, but in a situation that felt just as fixed. I'm talking about 16 years in IT. It wasn't terrible pay. Mostly wasn't unbearable work, but it wasn't really growing. Wasn't building anywhere. Yes, wasn't building anything towards I could put my hands on. Not that I can recall. Not becoming anyone different, just renewing various contracts year after year after year after year. Let's be grateful, George. And I knew it. And that's what I'm slightly embarrassed to tell you. I knew. There were years in there where I had a clear sense I had grown the work and the work hasn't outgrown me. And rather than doing something about it, I told myself I was fine. The situation wasn't ideal, but it was known. And guess what? Known is comfortable in a way that quietly, slowly costs you things you can't see until they're gone. I was getting used to the stage where I was just so sick and tired of gluing in front of the monitor for hours all day long. Perhaps you can relate to that. Eventually, yes, I made a move. So after 16 years in IT, I left and became a full-time real estate agent. And I want you to understand what that meant in practice. Completely different industry, right? Different skill sets, many ways. Different rhythm of work entirely. Yeah, it hurts when I don't get commissions, I can tell you that. So in my first quarter, my total sales were just 1. I had a desk, phone and a set of results that told me in plain numbers exactly how the transition was going. I'll tell you what's tough, yeah? I won't dress that up. But here's what I didn't expect, and this is what I keep returning to. You see, the skills I spent 16 years building didn't evaporate when I walked out the door of IT. They followed me in, okay? Client management, problem solving, the ability to read what someone actually needed rather than what they said they needed. All of it showed up in the new work in new ways I haven't anticipated. Now, the door's open, but I had to walk towards it first. So I had to make a choice. And you know what? King Solomon noticed something about that kind of person. I think he does. Have a listen to this. It's from Proverbs chapter 22, verse 29. Very simple. He says, Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. Obscure men. That's the key one, isn't it? He will stand before kings. I like that. Not because he lobbied for a better deal, not because the system finally treated him fairly, and not because he stayed long enough that the door opened on his own. People love revving up the engines, but because his hands were skillful. Now, I want to be careful here because there's a version of this teaching I find genuinely cruel. Yeah, listen to this. The version that says, if you're struggling, you simply haven't worked hard enough. If you're underpaid, your skills aren't valuable enough. The implication being, your situation is your fault, full stop. That sounds a bit unfair and really harsh, isn't it? And that is not what I'm saying. Oh, the cost of living, the pressures of it is real, especially now. Some people are carrying genuinely just unjust situations, and I don't want to wave that away from the proverb. I don't. But God placed in you the capacity to grow. That's my theme for today. And that capacity doesn't expire because the situation around you is unfair. Okay? What I saw from my time working at a payday lending company, and I've thought about this a lot since, is that the feeling of being trapped can harden into the story you tell yourself to explain why the door isn't worth trying at all, where you stop trying. And I watched that story cost people more than the original injustice ever did. Victimhood thinking, yeah, it doesn't stay where you put it in. It bleeds into the decisions you don't make. Think about the courses you don't enroll, the conversation that you don't start. To pivot, you keep deferring until conditions improve. Conditions are not going to improve first in many ways. Now, if what I'm talking about today is making sense to you, yeah, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share these videos far and wide. Okay, so here's what I find both challenging and honestly freeing about that proverb. It's not a formula, it's not a transaction, okay? But it's a pattern God has woven into how the world actually works. The person who invests in becoming genuinely skillful is not just experience, not just time served, but actually better, tends to find doors. So it's not always the door they expected. Not always on the timeline they wanted. But just doors. The doors does not open for the person who argued the longest that they deserve to be let in, right? A type of entitlement they've got. I think it opens for the person who was worth letting in because he or she is just solving someone else's problems. Think about that. My friends, I'm not unsympathetic to the workers in those northern Melbourne suburbs. I generally hope the situation resolves very quickly and fairly for all parties. But I want to ask you the question I had to ask myself. Is your situation genuinely unfair? Or are you waiting for the situation to change so you don't have to change? Think about that. And from the inside, those two things can feel identical, right? Just ask yourself. And for those who know my story from my past videos, I found out my IT contract wasn't being renewed via email. That hurt. I was midway into my meal when I saw it. It was a restaurant in Taiwan. Yeah, not nice. And I remember setting the phone down, looking at the food and not quite wanting either the meal or the news. Both were just sitting there. Now, I didn't know that a completely different industry was waiting on the other side of 16 years of skills I hadn't fully recognized yet. I didn't even know the door existed. I just knew that something had changed, and how I responded to it was mine to decide. Yes, I'm not saying do things my way. No, just be open-minded. And as you saw, the bins in Melbourne will be empty eventually, I'm sure. Something will break. The dispute will resolve, I'm sure. Well, one way or another, the trucks will roll again. Provided there's enough diesel going around in this present climate. But the person who spent that same disputed week sharpening something, learning something, building something, adding one skill that wasn't there before. That person and the person who waited are no longer staying in the same place when it's over. Yeah, as the Bible passage says, he will stand before kings. So my friends, what are your hands building today? Something towards a better future for your home, and something towards giving thanks to God. That's all I've got time for today. Thanks for being with me. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye bye.